New Year's Eve has always carried a strange energy. For some, it's the excitement of a fresh start. For others, it's the weight of what was left behind. But for me, this New Year's Eve was different. It was a night I'd never forget. I'd agreed to house sit for my friend Claire. She and her family were celebrating in the city, leaving their massive century-old house to me. "It'll be easy," she'd said. "Feed the cat, keep an eye on the place, and ring in the new year with a bottle of champagne." But Claire had forgotten to mention one thing: the clock. The house was silent when I arrived, save for the steady ticking of a grandfather clock in the foyer. The sound was deep and resonant, each tick echoing through the vast space like a heartbeat. Its face, illuminated faintly by moonlight, seemed to watch me, the intricate carvings on its wooden frame casting eerie shadows across the walls. It was an imposing thing, carved from dark wood and taller than me. The ornate face displayed not just the time but phases of the moon, astrological symbols, and other strange engravings I couldn't decipher. It stood like a sentinel, its pendulum swinging with a hypnotic rhythm. I'd planned to spend the evening watching movies, but every time I turned up the volume, the clock seemed to grow louder. By 10 p.m., I'd muted the TV, resigned to the metronomic echo that filled the house. It wasn't just a sound, it felt alive, like a heartbeat reverberating through the walls. At 11 p.m., the cat, an orange tabby named Felix, bolted from the living room to the basement, his fur bristling and tail puffed up like a bottle brush. He hissed and growled at something invisible in the corner of the room, his wide eyes fixed on a spot I couldn't see. The low, guttural sounds he made sent a chill down my spine, and his sudden, frantic movements made my stomach tighten with unease. "Felix?" I called, my voice trembling. "Come back here." No response, just the ticking. I grabbed a flashlight and headed to the basement, dreading the maze of cluttered boxes and cobwebbed corners. The air was damp and cold, and my breath fogged in front of me. Felix was nowhere to be found. Just as I was about to give up, the flashlight flickered. Then it went out completely. Panic clawed at me, and I stumbled back toward the stairs. That's when I heard it, a low, grinding noise like gears turning. It was coming from upstairs. I froze, listening. The grandfather clock was chiming, but not on the hour. It struck once, then twice, then stopped. I ran up the stairs and into the foyer. The clock's hands had moved forward past midnight, resting at 1 a.m. My stomach dropped as I stared at it, the impossibility of what I was seeing making my skin crawl. It felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving behind a suffocating weight. My pulse quickened, and a chill ran down my spine, a primal sense of dread settling deep in my bones. But that wasn't possible. It wasn't even 11:30 yet. The pendulum had stopped, and the house was silent. Too silent. No ticking, no hum of the furnace, not even the wind outside. The only sound was my shallow breathing. I decided I'd had enough. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, but when I reached for the handle, the knob didn't budge. It wasn't locked. It felt welded shut. A sudden sharp chime rang through the air. The clock struck once, then the lights went out. I've never known darkness like that before. It swallowed everything, thick and suffocating. My phone's flashlight wouldn't turn on, and I fumbled my way back to the living room. The only light came from the faint glow of the clock face, its symbols shimmering in the blackness. Then the whispering began. It was faint at first, like wind rustling through leaves. But it grew louder, voices overlapping in a language I couldn't understand. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, rising and falling in a maddening rhythm. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice breaking. The whispers stopped, and then, from the corner of the room, I saw it. A figure. It was impossibly tall, its frame gaunt and angular, as though its skin had been stretched too tightly over its bones. Its eyes glowed faintly, not with light but with an emptiness that seemed to pull everything around it into shadow. The edges of its form flickered like static on an old television, blurring the line between solid and ethereal. It didn't walk so much as it glided, each movement deliberate and unnervingly smooth. Tall and thin, its silhouette barely distinguishable from the shadows. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if testing the boundaries of my terror. "Stay back!" I screamed, clutching a fireplace poker I'd grabbed without realizing. The figure stopped. The whispers resumed, louder and clearer now. The clock chimed again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each strike shook the air, the vibrations rattling through my chest. I swung the poker wildly in the darkness, hitting nothing but air. When the lights flickered back on, the figure was gone, and so was Felix. I ran back to the foyer. The clock's hands were spinning wildly now, cycling through hours in seconds. The pendulum swung faster than seemed possible, blurring into a metallic arc. And then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The hands rested at 1 a.m. again, and the door opened on its own. I didn't wait to question it. I ran out into the freezing night, my breath visible in the frigid air. When I reached my car, I turned back to look at the house. The clock's glow was visible through the window, pulsating like a heartbeat. I never told Claire what happened. I couldn't explain it, and she never mentioned anything strange about the clock when she returned. But I've never agreed to house sit again. Every New Year's Eve since, I've stayed far away from ticking clocks, haunted by the memory of when the clock struck 1. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more horror content every week. And we want to hear from you. Share your scariest New Year's story in the comments below. Who knows? Your tale might inspire our next video. See you in the next one. And happy haunting.